In this video I'm going to be replacing the rack and pinion on this 2006 Chevrolet Impala LTZ with a 3.9 liter V6 motor. Alright, the owner of this vehicle took her car into the Chevrolet dealership for an unrelated issue. Upon looking at the vehicle, they found a couple other things that were wrong with the vehicle. One being the rack and pinion system. It's leaking power steering fluid pretty badly. They quoted her $1,167 to replace the rack and pinion system. Now that is for the parts and the labor and tax and all that. I was able to find a rack and pinion at Autozone for $195. We're going to save a lot of money by doing this ourselves. After this is all done, you're going to want to take your vehicle to a front end shop and have them align it. I know I've had my pickup aligned for, I think it was $70. First thing I did was just get the car up off the ground, got 2 jack stands on it, and I blocked off the rear tires so this thing's not going anywhere. We'll go ahead and get started. Alright, first thing we're going to do is get this end link out. Got to get the bolt out, but you can see right here how wet it is. That's from the power steering fluid that's leaking out of the steering box. This is an 18mm bolt. Alright, in order to get this tie rod off, I got to loosen this nut. I've been soaking it with WD-40. I went ahead and put it back down in the spindle here. I've got a 7/8 wrench. Put it on here. Since this is back down here, it kind of kept it from rotating. So I was able to break this loose. Now I'll pop this back out, and the tie rod just comes off by hand. Alright, on the end of the rod is the nut that the tie rod butts up against. I need to know the distance between the nut and the end of the rod so that when I put the new rack and pinion in, I'll put the nut at the same distance. That way the car is in essentially the same alignment as it was before I took it all apart. This will be good enough until we can take it into a shop and get it properly aligned. So I've got 13/16 of an inch. We'll do this to the other side. Alright, I'm under the driver's side of the car. You can see this cross member from the wheel, the subframe here. There are 2 bolts here that we're going to need to get out. And then we're going to have to get the power steering fluid lines undone there to the left of your screen. And then right here in this boot, if you lift that boot up, you can see there's a bolt right there, and it's like a clamp, like a sleeve that you just got to loosen that bolt, and that you can just pull the rod down. There are a couple of lines that seem like they might be clipped to the rack and pinion, so we're just going to be careful to, as we loosen this and get it taken out, that we don't ruin anything that might be bolted or clipped to it if I missed anything. Looking up through the wheel well here, this is an 11mm bolt underneath this rubber boot, and get your socket on it, but I've got it all set up, so all I'm going to do is loosen it, and then I'm going to go after those power steering fluid lines. Okay, there is the line for the power steering fluid. This is a line that comes from the power steering pump and goes down to the steering box. And you can see this is an 18mm nut. I did not have a wrench short enough to be able to work in this very confined area. I tried every wrench that I had, borrowed some wrenches from my father-in-law, and just could not get anything to fit and have any chance of turning the fitting. Alright, what I ended up getting was a 18mm crowfoot wrench that fits on the end of a 3/8 inch drive socket wrench. So this gives me a very short wrench here that I can actually fit in that space. And here I've got my 3/8 inch drive ratchet, several extensions. It goes all the way up to the fitting, which is right up in there. You see the end of my crow's foot wrench. It's hard to see the fitting, but I'm just underneath the wheel well here and was able to get enough torque on that fitting to break it loose. Now it's time to get the other one. I've got a 3/8 inch drive, a long extension, another long extension, a universal joint, a short extension, and then the crowfoot on the 18mm fitting. And I was able to twist this and break the fitting loose from here. Okay, this is looking down through the engine. You can see I've got the 18mm crowfoot on the fitting there. Alright, that's the setup I used to get the fitting loose in that second one. Short extension here, universal joint, and then 2 long extensions. Alright, I got those fittings loose. Time to celebrate. Anytime you can hit a small milestone like that in a project this big, take time to celebrate. Seriously, get yourself some crowfoot wrenches. I got these for $18 at Autozone. I couldn't have really gotten that done without these. The wrenches I had were too big, too long. I didn't have any room at all with any of the tools that I had. Even borrowed some from my father-in-law to try to get these out. Nah, stop what you're doing, pause the video, go to the store, spend $18 and get yourself a set of crowfoot wrenches. You'll be glad you did. You're going to need them for this project. Alright, I'm going to put an 18mm wrench on this end, and I've got my box end wrench on the other side of that bolt. I'm going to get this one out and the one on the other side down over here. I'd been debating whether or not I was going to take this sway bar off. I was trying to get the power steering fluid fittings loose, and this sway bar seemed like it was kind of in the way, but I was able to get them loose without moving it. But the sway bar, as it runs across this frame rail here, is in the way of getting those 18mm bolts out of the rack and pinion system here. So I've got to take this sway bar out. One, for that, and two, I think I'm going to need to free up this space to be able to pull the rack and pinion out. So I've got 13mm bolts here, and then the end link for the sway bar, they're 13mm as well. So okay, with the sway bar out of the way and these 18mm bolts out, this whole rack and pinion system is moving now. I can move it back and forth, but there are several things clamped to it, so I'm going to have to disconnect a few things, and then I'm going to try to go ahead and work this thing out. Alright, my adventures in rack and pinion continue. Last night I got the rack and pinion completely loose, and I was able to move it back and forth, and thought I was making some pretty good progress, but I just can't get this thing to come out. So what I've done is move the jack stands from underneath these lower A-arm here to back on the underside of the car where the factory jack points are. So I did that so I can get a jack right here on this cross member, the subframe here. I'm going to undo the body mounts, and with the jack I'm going to slowly lower this subframe here and give myself the room to pull this out.
Well, you've got 1.5 inches.
I just need to clear that pin on the steering box. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Check it.
Yeah, shoot that sucker down.
Still feels like I'm caught on something. There we go. It's free! Freedom! 13/16, that's that measurement I took earlier. We put that tie rod on, then that helps keep the car basically in the alignment it was. And then I got the shield on. The kit comes with bushings that'll replace the bushings on the fittings. New bushings to go here. I got a new tie rod to put on here because I damaged the old one. Trying to hit that channel there.
Hang on, okay.
You want to check that bushing whenever you get down there. It gets down there because I think we popped it out a little bit.
Okay.
Alright, I got the fittings in. Just be very careful not to cross thread. Do it with your fingers at first just to get them started, and then torque them down snug. Not too snug, you don't want to crack anything. My father-in-law helped. He got the bolts in on the rack and pinion. Since we took the body mount off and lowered it, I was able to use just a standard 18mm wrench to tighten down those fittings. I did this one right here underneath the car, and I did the other one from on top of the car. Now we got everything buttoned in. It's time to raise the mounts back up to the body.
That's it.
Okay.
Come on.
Alright, sway bover coming at you.
Okay. I got the end of that sucker. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Now I'll rotate that sucker.
Alright, now I'm going to straighten out the wheel and put this outer tie rod in just loosely. That way we can keep the wheels pretty straight. Now we're going to attempt to attach the steering knuckle to the rack and pinion, and we're going to have that steering wheel held really straight. My father-in-law is going to hold the steering wheel straight while I get that pin on. Alright, so here's what I'm trying to do with the new steering box here. Inside that rubber boot that sits around this, there's a little coupler that looks like a U with holes in it. You're trying to slide it down this flat part of the pin here, and this notch is where the bolt will go through and sit in that notch there. That's how you know it's on properly. Now the new pinion comes from the factory perfectly centered. You can see I'm going to get a pry bar, move this back, get it lined up, and then pry it back that direction and slide it down that pin and put the bolt in.
As soon as we set it down, we'll tighten them up the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check our fluid. Shows that obviously we need to add. Start with that. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is turn the vehicle on and turn the steering wheel all the way to the right, and then go all the way back to the left, all the way back to the right, and just get that power steering fluid pumped through the rack and pinion. Alright, that noise is just with it being low on fluid and it's working itself out. That noise will go away. You can see a lot of bubbles. That's the air. The air is bleeding out of the system there. Okay, it looks like we've got a decent amount of fluid in there. Okay, I'm going to start the car and turn the wheel again. Well, as we started the car, you could hear that whine. The power steering pump was whining. There was a lot of air in the system. As you turn the steering wheel back and forth, bump it as you get to the end. Do it 7 or 8 times, turn the engine off, check your fluid. It should have a lot of air pressure, a lot of bubbles. The more and more you do that, the less bubbles, less air, and less noise you'll have from your power steering pump. So, well, there you have it. That's my adventure in changing a rack and pinion. I have never done this before. It was definitely a learning experience for me. It was a big job. Got the scrapes and busted knuckles and bruises and aches and pains all over to prove that was a pretty big job. And having an extra set of hands today with my father-in-law helping me out made it go so much easier. That, and I learned that undoing those bolts and taking that subframe down gave me a whole heck of a lot more room to work with, and I was able to get that rack and pinion out and put the new one in with a little help, and the job went a whole lot easier. So if I can do this job, you can definitely do it. But I certainly won't think less of you if you decide to take it somewhere and have a professional do it. And don't take this as an end-all be-all on how to replace the rack and pinion system. It's certainly just a helpful guide. I hope it helps you. It gives you something to think about. I'm certainly no expert. Hopefully the video was helpful for you. Appreciate you watching. And keep an eye on this channel. I'll have some more repairs coming up, and also have some ideas to have a little fun on the channel too. It's not all work and no play. Anyway, just remember, if you want to strike it rich quick, just count your blessings. Thanks for watching. God bless.